Hello Internet and welcome to today's edition of 1 Minute News from 1 Minute Economics, an edition dedicated to analyzing Trump's full budget proposals. And before starting, I want to make it clear that these are just proposals. Nothing is final, and if Congress doesn't take things from proposal to law, then nothing is going to happen. So if history is an indicator, then it's likely that Congress is going to pretty much tear these proposals to shreds, like what has been done, for example, with Barack Obama's budget of last year. Still, I think it's important to analyze these proposals because they do tend to make it clear how the administration is positioning itself on several core issues. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start by taking a minute to analyze the projections that these proposals are based on. Then in another minute, I'm going to give you guys a general overview, if you will. Then I'm going to spend another minute to talk about the biggest winners of these proposals and a minute to talk about the biggest losers. Finally, we're going to be drawing some conclusions. So with that stated, I think we can get started. Let's begin by analyzing the projections these proposals are based on, and I have to say, they are plain and simply ridiculous. There's no other word to describe them. I'm going to share an image which shows that based on these predictions, the economy is going to grow by 3% per year for an extended period of time, and these people are not expecting any downturns. Now, this is, again, plain and simply ridiculous. I'm going to link to my video about the business cycle, and as pretty much everyone knows, the economy doesn't always go up. Even more so, it has been a long time, since '09 to be precise, since the US economy has gone through a downturn. And for these projections to assume that not only will the economy keep going up for many years to come, but it'll never go down, not even once over that long time frame. I'm sorry, but I don't even know how to describe this now. If I, for one, would fire the team that came to me with these ridiculous proposals on the spot. How can you assume something like that? It goes against human nature. It goes against everything history teaches us. To assume we're not going to have a downturn, to assume that even more so the economy is going to go up at a faster pace than at this point, I think it's reckless. I think it's silly, and most importantly, it's shockingly bad economics. Okay, now it's time to calm myself after my blood pressure went up by looking at those proposals and discuss the proposals themselves, give you guys a general overview. Now, at first sight, you're going to look at the image I'm sharing and you're going to say, oh my God, cuts are being implemented across the board, and in only 3 places are there increases. I would like to say that on the one hand you're right, but on the other hand, one of the 3 entities which will be seeing a significant budget increase is going to be the Defense Department. The Defense Department, which already has a huge budget and which is going to receive an increase of over $50 billion in 2018, according to these proposals. So the explanation is simple. If you would like me to basically sum up this budget in just one sentence, it would be simple. The Defense Department is going to receive a lot of money, and for this to happen, given the sheer size of the Defense Department and the huge budget it already has, for this to happen, obviously that money has to come from somewhere. So we have cuts across the board, starting with, of course, 1/3 of the budget being slashed when it comes to the State Department, about 1/3 being slashed when it comes to the EPA, and so on. The story of the budget, the narrative is simple. A lot more money is going to be spent on defense, and since that money has to come from somewhere, the image speaks for itself, and there are going to be cuts across the board. Let's take things one step further and analyze the top two winners of these proposals. And of course, the number one winner by far is the Defense Department, which already has a huge budget of $587 billion. That's about to get even bigger, 9% bigger in fact, in 2018 through an increase of $52 billion. On position number two in terms of percentage, we have Homeland Security with 7%, which sounds impressive as well, but since those 7% are applied to a budget that's much, much smaller, as you can see, than that of the Defense Department, the impact will definitely not be nearly as dramatic. So this much is certain, the star of the show is the Defense Department. That's going to receive a lot of money. And strangely enough, sources tend to indicate that they're not happy with these increases, that they want even more money. But as an economist, I'm sorry, I cannot help but raise an eyebrow and ask if all of this is genuinely a good idea. I mean, look, I know that perhaps the main role of the state is protecting your property, and defense spending plays an extremely important role in all of this. But just think about how much money the US is already spending compared to everyone else. Then if you also factor in the allies of the United States and try to calculate how much everyone spends combined, I think you'll end up agreeing with me in saying that perhaps this increase is not the best idea in the world. Moving on to the biggest losers, if you will, it once again becomes clear how the Trump administration intends to position itself. On the one hand, they obviously intend to take a step back on the international scene, and the fact that you have a 33% cut when it comes to the State Department speaks for itself. The United States intends to be less of a player internationally, if you will, or at least spend less money as an international player than in the past. And something else becomes obvious, the fact that the Trump administration is definitely not what you'd consider a fan of in protecting the environment, with the fact that the EPA is going to lose about a third of its budget in 2018, speaking for itself. These are political decisions. Whether you agree with them or not, it's all a matter of your political orientations and so on. But this is how things currently stand. And as you can remember from back when I shared the overview image, a lot of other sectors will be affected by cuts, like, for example, education with a 14% loss, or agriculture with a 21% decrease, and so on. A lot of money is being taken from a lot of places to fund projects such as defense-related ones. That's just how things stand. And finally, it's time for some quick conclusions, and I'm sorry, but this budget is utterly disappointing. It's a budget that first and foremost is built on completely unrealistic expectations of the economy continuing to go up for an extended period of time without any downturns, and even more so, growing at an impressive 3% per year. I'm sorry, but that makes absolutely zero sense to me as an economist. Also, ultimately, it all boils down to taking money from a bunch of places to fund expenses such as defense-related ones, which is something I don't necessarily think is the best idea as an economist, but still, to be fair, I'm going to share some data from 2016 which shows what voters, both Republicans and Democrats, want. It's important to understand that this is, after all, a Republican administration, and even if I personally don't agree with a lot of these things, we do have to keep in mind that, for example, Republican voters want, above everything else, the government to spend money on law enforcement, crime, defense, and so on. So even with exceptions such as education, which has received cuts of about 14%, we do have to notice that these proposals give Republican voters what they want in a lot of key issues, and when it comes to a few issues such as foreign aid, it gives both Republicans and Democrats what they want. But I'm sorry, as an economist who considers himself not a fan of the Republicans and not a fan of the Democrats either, I do have to say that this budget is completely disappointing, and I, for one, am extremely worried about the future, given that these people who are in charge of these projections and who came up with this particular budget are involved in running the show. That's just the way it is. And on that note, I'm going to put an end to today's edition of 1 Minute News from 1 Minute Economics. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in again. Please like this video, comment, be active in the community, and if you haven't by now, subscribe to 1 Minute Economics. Also, if you can, please also head on over to 1minuteeconomics.com, where you can find out how you can support the channel by buying my book, by donating through Bitcoin, PayPal, Patreon, and so on. Thanks a lot for everything, guys, and have an awesome week.